So, F1 2018 has only been out for about a month now, but I am already thinking about the future, F1 2019. Now, there's a little rumour going around that F1 2019 won't be a standalone game, just a sort of DLC for F1 2018. Only time will tell, I suppose. Either way, I still want more classic cars for when F1 2019 does come along, be it a DLC or a standalone. And here are some, I'd say predictions, they're probably more suggestions. Who knows what's going to happen? Here we go. The first of these suggestions is also our oldest suggestion, the oldest car I've come up with. The Lotus 49, one of Jim Clark's many cars. This is a legendary Formula 1 car in its own right. It competed, I think, until 1972? No. Yeah, I think probably the very earliest races of 1972 before it was replaced by the 72 itself. It's notable for a few things. It was the first Formula 1 car to use the venerable Ford Cosworth DFV V8 engine, and it was also the first Formula 1 car to ever have a sponsor on it. That being the Lotus 49 B, I think. Yeah, there were three main variants of the 49, the B, and the C. If this car is introduced, then I'd expect that there would have to be an entire Class 4 added of 60s F1 cars, and maybe even some 50s F1 cars. Of course, that's probably a long shot, since they did introduce Class 3 with 2018, so it's a little unlikely, but I can dream, can't I? So, how about we stick with Class 3 and introduce the 1975 Ferrari 312T. Now, the 76 312T2 is in the game, but this is the car that won Niki Lauda his first championship. This is personally my favourite of the 312Ts, mostly due to that weird airbox on top. What can I say? I have strange tastes. Of course, seeing that the very similar 312T2 is already in the game, and we already have the 312T4, it's unlikely that the 312T1 would be introduced. But once again, I can dream, can't I? I'd love to be able to drive this car in the 2019 game. So, sticking with Class 3, we move to another 80s classic, and that's the Brabham BT52. Powered by the exceedingly powerful BMW straight 4 turbocharged M12 unit, word salad. This car more or less dominated the 1983 season, which was the first season since 1977 where not a single car on the grid had ground effect. It's a fantastic little car that I think a lot of people would be very excited to be able to drive. It would be nice, after all, to have that BMW M12 unit in the game in some form. Speaking of which, the 1986 Benetton B186, the first Benetton. This car is, well, I want to say renowned. It probably wasn't renowned. It was a decently successful car. Not a championship winner, of course. But that BMW power unit, in qualifying trim, it could reach up to 1,450 brake horsepower. Nothing's ever come close since that. And of course this was the last year of the unrestricted turbos until 1987, and they restricted the turbo pressure to 4 bar and restricted it further still in 1988 to 2.5 bar. The Benetton B186 is the last hurrah of the original turbo era. Speaking of turbos, we come to the newest classic car on this list. The 2014 Mercedes W05. The first turbo hybrid car ever to win a championship. Say what you will about the Mercedes domination. I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of them. I'd like to see them go down a very deep hole, but this car was one of the better looking of the 2014 uglies. In fact, if anything, it's probably pretty compared to the rest of them. And you've got to admit it was very, very successful, as were the 2015 and 2016 cars. Thank God those years are gone. But if those years had happened, the 2014 season would have been just, well, it was something to see. The championship fight in that season was one of the closest of modern times. This car would fit quite well into Class 1. I think it could also integrate some of the modern F1 car mechanics into it, such as the ERS system. It obviously wouldn't help improve the pace of this car. I mean, it's no F2004, but it would still be pretty quick, especially compared to something like a 2008 McLaren. Speaking of which, the 2008 MP423 is already available, but the 2007 MP422 is not. I may have loved Michael Schumacher, but this car was the first F1 car that I really properly knew the look of. And you know, it helped that I had and still have some bed linen with this car on it. Personally, my favourite looking year of F1 cars. They're just utterly perfect looking cars. Not even a 90s car comes close to this MP422. I think one of the best looking F1 cars ever. Of course, looks are not everything. It was driven by two excellent drivers. Even Lewis Hamilton, back when I liked him a lot more. And Fernando Alonso, who I liked a lot less back then. This car and its two drivers damn near sealed both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. Unfortunately, Spygate tarnished that year, and both Hamilton and Alonso managed to throw away the championship in the final few rounds, and both tied with each other and gave that title to Kimi Raikkonen. Which is a shame. You know, Hamilton, I think he honestly deserved a bit more back then. It would have been great to see him get a championship in his rookie year. Now he's getting too many championships. Speaking of someone with many championships, how about the person with the most? Michael Schumacher's 1994 Benetton B194, his first championship-winning car. Yeah, okay, it might have had traction control in a year where traction control was banned, but look at this thing. Either way, it's a beautiful looking car. It's a Michael Schumacher car. You can never have enough. Speaking of which, I forgot to get a picture of it, but the 1991 Jordan 191. Please, Cody's, please. And it was also the last of the old 3.5 litre V8s to win. It was the last, well, one of the last V8s to win. before the 2.4 litre V8s came along. Like, as in the last V8 to win, when you had a choice to take V8s and not everyone has to have one. And finally, we have two cars from the same year. The 2005 Renault R25 and McLaren MP4/20. The Renault is significant for being, well, the last V10 car to win a championship, but also the last F1 car to ever use a 6-speed gearbox, which, you know, that's weird. I never thought that any of the V10 cars used a 6-speed gearbox in the 2000s. I thought that was only in the 90s until, well, only a couple of years ago. The MP420 was Racing Car of the Year 2005. It's also a pretty good looking car. It's not quite as good looking as the MP422, but this is an evolution, or rather a predecessor. MP422 was an evolution of this design. And also, it was a very close-knit battle between Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen, who drove this car from 17th on the grid to first place in Japan. If nothing else, that is this car's crowning achievement. One of the last great McLarens. And so that's just some of the classic F1 cars I would like to see introduced into F1 2019, if it is a standalone game, and also if it ends up just being a DLC. I want more classic cars. I also want some more tracks, like classic tracks, and I also want the ability to have full grids with the classic cars, like 26 car classic races. I mean, it's possible. They did it with F1 2015, where they had the 2014 mode that had 22 race cars, and 2015 mode which had 20 cars. I want to see 26 car grids with classic cars. That would be great, with at least some of the cars in this list. Codemasters, I know you're probably never gonna see this video, but if you do, please, I want to see more. I love classic cars. That's all from me. Until the next time, good night.